"Don't you dare open that bag, Mom." My son's voice cracked through the phone, sharp, panicked, and full of fear. I froze in the passenger seat, staring at that harmless blue bag on the floor. But tell me this, what kind of son warns his mother not to look at the thing that could destroy her life? If you've ever trusted someone so much, it nearly broke you, stay till the end. This story is for you. "Ethan, turn the car around, now." The words burst from my mouth before I could even think. Outside, Vermont had vanished beneath a storm of swirling white. The snow fell thick and sideways, like a curtain closing on the world, while the wind screamed across the windshield. Ethan's hands tightened around the steering wheel, his knuckles pale against the dark leather. "Margaret, what's wrong?" he asked, voice uncertain, as if afraid of my answer. "Just turn around," I repeated. This time my voice shook. My pulse was racing, though I didn't yet know why. It wasn't reason, it was instinct. That cold, invisible hand that sometimes grips your chest before disaster strikes. The tires slid. The car spun halfway across the frozen road before jerking to a stop. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The sound of the wipers scraping against glass filled the silence, a desperate rhythm in a world gone still. Then something rattled softly behind us. I turned, slowly. There it was, a small blue canvas bag sitting quietly on the back seat, beside my coat. It looked harmless, almost forgettable, yet I couldn't tear my eyes away. A strange unease pulsed through me, deeper than fear, sharper than curiosity. Ethan followed my gaze. "Margaret," he said, "what's in the bag?" I didn't answer. My throat felt dry, my hands numb, because at that moment, my son's voice came echoing back to me, trembling, urgent, unforgettable. "Don't you dare open that bag, Mom." The words had haunted me all day, but now, in the silence of the storm, they sounded like a warning carved into my bones. I pressed my palms together, as if I could hold my fear still. Outside, the snow kept falling, quiet but relentless, erasing everything in sight. Ethan shifted uneasily beside me. "Margaret, talk to me. What did Daniel say to you?" I finally looked at him, and my voice came out barely above a whisper. "He told me not to touch it, not to look inside." I thought I was protecting my son by listening to him. I didn't realize he was the one who needed protecting from me. The day had started peacefully, the way ordinary tragedies often do. That morning, sunlight had filtered through the kitchen window, pale but warm. I had been stirring cocoa in a saucepan, humming an old tune my mother used to sing. The radio played softly in the background, a weather warning, light snow, nothing unusual for late November in Vermont. The phone rang. I smiled when I saw the name on the screen. Daniel, my only child, my greatest pride. He didn't call often, but when he did, it always felt like a small miracle. "Hi, sweetheart," I said cheerfully, wiping my hands on a towel. "Are you driving? You sound winded." "Mom." His voice broke through the line, tight and uneven. "Listen to me carefully. There's a blue bag in the hall closet. You see it?" I frowned, glancing toward the door. "Yes. You left it here last week, didn't you? What about it?" "Don't open it. Promise me, Mom. No matter what happens, no matter what anyone says, don't open that bag." My heart skipped. "Daniel, you're scaring me. What's in there?" "Please, Mom, just promise." His voice rose, cracking like a child's. "I'll explain everything tonight. Just don't." The call cut off. I stood there for a long moment, phone pressed to my ear, staring at nothing. The clock ticked loudly on the wall. The smell of cocoa had turned bitter. When Ethan came in from the porch, brushing snow off his jacket, he noticed my face immediately. "What's wrong?" "It's Daniel," I whispered. He sounded frightened. Ethan tried to reassure me. "He's probably just overwhelmed. You know how he gets." But I knew my son's voice. Fear leaves a mark that a mother can hear even through static. That call wasn't just fear. It was guilt, trying to disguise itself as warning. By afternoon, the snow had thickened, blanketing the trees and silencing the world. Ethan insisted we leave early for the cabin, a safer place to ride out the storm, he said. I packed lightly, some clothes, a few groceries, and, against my better judgment, the blue bag. It felt heavier than I remembered. Ethan loaded it into the back seat while I locked the door. I told myself not to think about it, but the image of Daniel's trembling voice wouldn't leave my mind. The drive was slow and quiet. The world outside was fading into shades of white and gray. The radio came in and out of static. The heater hummed softly, but I couldn't shake the chill in my bones. Ethan tried to lighten the mood. "You remember our first winter here?" he said, smiling faintly. "You hated it," said Vermont felt like the inside of a freezer. I forced a smile, but my eyes drifted to the back seat. The blue bag sat perfectly still, yet I had the strangest feeling it was watching us. "Margaret," Ethan said, noticing my silence. "You're pale. You sure you're okay?" "I just keep thinking about Daniel," I murmured. He sounded like someone was forcing him to say those words. "Maybe he was," Ethan replied softly, and his voice made my skin prickle. I looked out the window. The snow was coming down harder now, a solid wall of white. The car rocked slightly in the wind. Every instinct in me said something was wrong, something far beyond the storm. "Pull over," I said suddenly. Ethan blinked. "What? Why?" "I need to see that bag." He hesitated. "Margaret, please," I whispered. "I have to know." The car eased onto the shoulder of the narrow road. The storm outside howled, erasing even the outline of the trees. My hand reached back slowly, fingers trembling as they brushed against the canvas. It was cold, like metal hidden beneath cloth. I pulled it toward me. The zipper felt stiff under my fingertips. Ethan's hand closed over mine. "Margaret, stop. Maybe it's dangerous." "Then I need to know what kind of danger." Before I could pull the zipper, my phone lit up again. Daniel's name, I answered with shaking hands. "Daniel, what's happening?" His voice came through, rough, breaking apart with panic. "Mom, listen to me, don't open it. They're watching. Please, you have to trust me." And then, a sudden thud against the car door. Ethan and I froze. The sound came again, harder this time. I turned slowly, heart hammering. Outside, through the blur of snow and glass, a face appeared at the window. I gasped, breath catching in my throat. Because even through the frost and darkness, I recognized him. It was Daniel. My son was supposed to be hundreds of miles away. So who or what was standing in the storm outside our car? If you've ever ignored your instincts only to wish you hadn't, stay with me. Because that night, in a blizzard that erased all sense of direction, my intuition became the only thing standing between truth and destruction. When people ask what peace looks like, I often think of Burlington on winter mornings. The lake frozen at the edges, the sound of a single car in the distance, the pale light slipping through curtains before the day begins. For 70 years, I had lived in this rhythm of small things. I thought I knew calm. I thought I knew safety. Ethan and I shared a modest home on the outskirts of town. A white house with faded blue shutters and a porch swing that creaked when the wind blew. I had spent 35 years as a nurse, patching wounds and comforting strangers until their pain became my own. When I finally retired, I told myself it was time to rest, time to bake, to read, to let the world go on without me. But quiet can be dangerous when you've spent a lifetime fixing broken things. You start noticing cracks in your own walls. Daniel was our only child. He was born small and sickly, and for weeks after his birth, I barely slept. I used to count his breaths at night, afraid that if I stopped listening, he would stop breathing. When his father died in a construction accident years later, Daniel was only 9. I remember holding his hand at the funeral, feeling his fingers tremble inside mine. I raised him alone. I worked double shifts, skipped dinners, pawned jewelry to pay for his college tuition. I thought love would be enough. I was wrong. Now, he was 43. Once an engineer with a future so bright it made me proud just to say his name, now unemployed for nearly a year. His wife, Lily, worked long hours at a cafe downtown, her smile forced and tired. They lived in a small rented apartment above a hardware store with their son, Noah, who had just turned 7. Every Sunday, they came over for lunch. I would cook pot roast or stew, and Noah would draw pictures at the kitchen table, while Lily scrolled through her phone. Daniel tried to act cheerful, but his eyes always carried that same distant worry the kind men wear when pride has started to crack. It was last Sunday, in that same kitchen, that I noticed it again. The blue bag. He carried it in, placed it by the door, and said nothing. When I asked, he just smiled and changed the subject. I let it go. That's what mothers do. We pretend not to see what might break us. The house was quiet again. Only the ticking clock dared to speak. That night, I couldn't sleep. The snow had begun falling, soft at first, whispering against the window panes. Ethan was snoring gently beside me. I stared at the ceiling and thought about Daniel, about how little I truly knew of his life now, about the way he hugged me lately tight but rushed, as if time itself were chasing him. I got up, walked downstairs, and sat in the kitchen. The air was cold, but I didn't mind. I traced the rim of my teacup and watched the steam fade. Around my wrist, the silver bracelet caught the light. Ethan had given it to me on our wedding day, engraved with our initials and a single word: always. It had survived 4 decades of work, grief, and motherhood. It was the one thing that never left me. I had never taken it off, not even when I scrubbed blood from hospital floors or buried the man who gave it to me. Now, it glinted quietly in the dim light, a symbol of everything I had chosen to believe: that love, if tended gently, would always protect us. But even as I thought it, the words felt fragile. If this moment touched you, share it. Someone out there might need it today. The next morning, Ethan found me sitting at the table, still awake. He poured me coffee and smiled in that patient way of his. "You're worrying again," he said softly. "I'm fine," I replied, though my voice betrayed me. "You've been staring at that bracelet for 10 minutes. I looked down. The metal felt cold against my skin. "It used to remind me of safety," I said quietly. "Now it feels like a chain." He reached across the table and covered my hand with his. "You did everything you could for him, Margaret. Whatever's happening with Daniel, it's not your fault." I wanted to believe that. But guilt has its own gravity. It pulls you back toward the moments you wish you could rewrite. I remembered the first time Daniel came home after losing his job. He stood in the doorway, eyes red, trying to smile for Noah. I had wrapped my arms around him, whispering that everything would be all right. He had nodded against my shoulder, but he didn't believe me. Neither did I. That night, I took off my bracelet for the first time. I placed it on the nightstand and stared at it for a long while before closing my eyes. Somehow, it felt like I was letting go of something sacred. The house was still. The only sound was the snow tapping against the window. Even the world seemed to be holding its breath. By midweek, Daniel stopped answering my calls. Lily texted that he was figuring things out. I tried not to pry. Mothers are told to respect boundaries, even when silence feels like punishment. Then came Friday's storm, the phone call, the warning, the blue bag. As we sat in the car that night, snow howling around us, I realized how far I had fallen from the life I thought I built. I was a woman who spent her life saving others. Yet here I was, terrified of a simple bag left by the boy I once saved from the world. Ethan turned to me gently, voice trembling. "You think Daniel's in trouble?" I nodded. "Yes. And whatever it is, we're already part of it." The car went quiet. The wind pressed against the glass like a whisper we couldn't escape. My breath fogged the window. For a long moment, I just listened to the storm, to my own heartbeat, to the quiet between us. The world outside was white and cold, but the fear inside that car was warm and alive. I looked at the blue bag again, then at my bracelet. Both glinted faintly in the dim light. One a memory of trust, the other a threat I could not name. Somewhere far away, a siren wailed, brief, distant, then gone. The house was quiet again. Only the storm dared to speak. Every story of betrayal begins quietly. In moments so ordinary, you almost miss them. I didn't know it yet, but that winter in Burlington was about to test everything I believed about love, loyalty, and the son I thought I knew. It started with a call on a Tuesday afternoon. The light outside was thin, fading early, the way winter light does in Vermont. I was folding laundry when the phone rang. "Hi, Mom," Daniel said, his tone bright but tight. I could tell something was coming. That tone always meant he needed to ask for something. "Hi, sweetheart. How's everyone doing?" He hesitated. Then his words came carefully, each one rehearsed. "We've been thinking about enrolling Noah in private school. There's this place just outside Burlington. Smaller classes, better environment. We really think it could change everything for him." I paused, folding the same towel twice. "Is something wrong at his school?" "Well," he began, searching for words. "He's been having a tough time. Some of the kids are mean. It's affecting him. We just want what's best for him." There was a silence between us. I pictured Noah, his shy smile, the way his hair fell into his eyes when he laughed. I had just seen him 2 weeks before. He had seemed happy, chattering about his science fair project and the snowman he built in the yard. "What does it cost?" I asked softly. Daniel cleared his throat. 18,000 a year. I froze. My fingers pressed against the folded towel until I felt the roughness of the fabric. 18,000. I tried to imagine what that number looked like, how many nights it represented, how many years of saving. I see, I said finally. That's a lot of money. He sighed. I know, Mom. We'll pay you back once things settle, but Noah deserves this. For the first time, I didn't answer right away. My heart wanted to say yes. My reason whispered no. After a long pause, I spoke quietly. Let me think about it, Daniel. I'll call you tomorrow. There was silence on the other end. Not the kind filled with thought, but the kind that feels like the beginning of distance. Then he said flatly, Sure, Mom, take your time. The call ended. The house was quiet again. Only the clock dared to speak. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching snow fall over the dark street. Ethan was reading in bed, but I barely heard his voice when he spoke. My thoughts were a loop of images. Noah's smile, Daniel's hollow tone, Lily's silence in the background of the call. For 30 years, I had been the answer to every question they asked. And now, for the first time, I had given them hesitation. Just one small sentence. Let me think. And it was enough to change everything. I remembered how it used to be. The birthdays I hosted, the meals I cooked. The small drawings Noah made for me. One of them was still pinned to the fridge, a bright crayon picture of the two of us holding hands under a tree. Above it, he had written in wobbly letters, Grandma's house is the Sunday. It had been the first thing I saw every morning. That night, I stood in the kitchen and looked at that drawing. The colors had faded a little, the edges curling with time. I reached out to touch it, then stopped. Something in me already knew. The next morning, it was gone. Just an empty space where the magnet still clung to the fridge, holding nothing at all. The kitchen smelled of cold coffee. The house was so still that I could hear my own breathing. Only one word, I thought. Only one pause, and they erased me. If this moment touched you, share it. Someone out there might need it today. Days turned into weeks. My phone stayed silent. No more calls, no messages, no visits on Sunday. Ethan tried to comfort me. They'll come around, he said gently, wrapping his arm around my shoulder. He's just frustrated. I nodded, but inside, something had cracked. Not loud enough to hear, but deep enough to feel. One afternoon, I called Daniel. It went straight to voicemail. I called again the next day. No answer. I told myself he was busy, that Noah was sick, that Lily had picked up extra shifts. But truth has a way of whispering through even the strongest lies. A week later, I saw a photo online. Lily had posted it, Noah in his winter coat, grinning in front of a Christmas tree. They were at a festival not far from my house. No one had told me. I sat down at the table and stared at the screen. My hands were cold. My eyes didn't water, but my chest tightened until it hurt to breathe. It wasn't anger. It was something quieter, sadder. The feeling of being unnecessary. The house was silent. The refrigerator hummed softly. Outside, the wind brushed against the windows like an old friend I no longer recognized. Ethan brought me tea that evening. You can still reach out, he said. I did, I whispered. They're not reaching back. He said nothing more. We sat together in the dim light, the only sound the soft clinking of our cups. I looked down at my silver bracelet. The word always caught the light again. It had once meant love without conditions. Now it felt like a promise I couldn't keep. I traced the engraving with my thumb until it blurred. Then, I set the cup down and listened. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn echoed faintly. The house creaked as if it were sighing. I thought about the years I had spent saying yes, the sacrifices I made without question, and how, in the end, one quiet no was louder than all of them. I never called again after that week. I told myself it was time to let them be, to stop waiting by the phone. But every night before bed, I still looked at the fridge, at that empty space, at the mark left behind by the tape that once held Noah's drawing. The silence became part of the house, the kind that doesn't hurt right away, but settles in slowly until you forget what sound feels like. I learned that rejection doesn't always come as a door slammed shut. Sometimes it comes as nothing at all. No anger, no goodbye, just absence. And absence, when stretched long enough, becomes a kind of cruelty. The lamp flickered once. The snow outside glowed under the porch light. The world kept moving, quiet and indifferent. And in that stillness, I finally understood. Sometimes, love ends not with betrayal, but with distance, a slow, invisible kind that steals everything before you even realize it's gone. Some silences are louder than words. And when a family stops calling, it isn't the sound you miss most. It's the meaning that used to fill it. The hope before the fall. 2 months passed before the phone finally rang. I was in the garden, trimming the last of the dried roses, when the sound broke through the quiet afternoon. For a moment, I didn't recognize the number. Then I heard his voice. "Mom," Daniel said softly, "we've been thinking about you. We miss you. How about a little weekend trip to Lake Placid? Just the 3 of us, like old times." My knees nearly gave out. The pruning shears slipped from my hand and fell into the grass. I pressed the phone close to my ear. You miss me?" "Of course," he said. "We shouldn't have stayed away so long. Noah's been asking about you. We just want to make things right." The words hit something tender inside me. For weeks, I had prayed for that call, replaying every silence, every empty Sunday. And now, suddenly, it was over. They wanted me again. I felt warmth spread through my chest, the kind that comes from forgiveness before you even decide to give it. "I'd love that," I whispered. "I'll cook something for the trip." He laughed lightly. "No need, Mom. Just pack warm clothes. Lily and I will handle everything." The line clicked off. I stood there for a long time, the cold air brushing against my cheeks, my heart fluttering between joy and disbelief. The garden was quiet again. Only the wind moved through the empty branches. They came that Friday evening. I had cleaned the house twice, baked apple bread, and even put fresh sheets in the guest room. When their car pulled into the driveway, I felt like a child waiting for Christmas morning. Lily stepped out first. She wore a soft beige coat, her hair pinned neatly back. She smiled, small, polite, but it was a smile. "Hi, Mom," she said. "You look wonderful." Her voice was smoother than I remembered, almost rehearsed. I didn't care. I hugged her anyway. Then Daniel appeared, carrying Noah in his arms. The boy squealed and threw himself toward me, arms wrapping around my neck. I held him tight, breathing in the scent of winter and childhood, and everything I'd missed. In that moment, the months of silence vanished. We had dinner together. It felt almost normal. Lily complimented my soup. Daniel laughed at one of Ethan's old stories. Noah drew at the table, humming quietly to himself. I watched them and thought, this is what family feels like again. When they got up to leave, Lily turned to me and handed me a small blue canvas bag. "Could you bring this with you, Mom?" she asked gently. "The car's packed full. We'll pick it up at the cabin tomorrow." I smiled without hesitation. "Of course." Her fingers brushed mine as she passed it over. The bag was lighter than I expected, but something inside it shifted faintly, like glass against cloth. Then it happened. The silver bracelet on my wrist turned cold. Not just cool, but icy, as if the metal had absorbed something that wasn't right. I rubbed it, frowning slightly. "You all right?" Daniel asked. "Just a chill," I said, forcing a smile. "Must be the weather." But something deep inside me stirred. It was faint, like the whisper of a memory that refused to fade. The last time I had seen that blue bag, Daniel's voice had trembled with fear. That night, as I packed my suitcase, I placed the bag gently by the door. Every few minutes, I looked at it again, as if waiting for it to explain itself. The air in the room felt heavy. The clock ticked softly, each second a small reminder that I was heading into something I didn't fully understand. The next morning, I woke before dawn. Ethan was still asleep, breathing slow and steady beside me. Outside, the world was pale and frozen, the lake glinting under a thin veil of ice. I went to the kitchen, poured coffee, and sat at the table. The smell was sharp and comforting. For a moment, I closed my eyes and tried to let myself believe in peace. But peace has a fragile sound. It's too quiet, too perfect. I looked at the bracelet again, twisting it around my wrist. It no longer felt like a symbol of love. It felt like a warning I didn't yet understand. If this moment touched you, share it. Someone out there might need it today. They called an hour before departure. "Mom, we'll meet you there," Daniel said. "Traffic's bad from our side, so it's easier if you go ahead with Ethan." I hesitated. "All right. Are you sure?" "Absolutely. The keys are already at the cabin. Just make yourselves comfortable. We'll be there before dinner." I hung up and stared at the phone. There was a faint ringing in my ears that wouldn't stop. Something about his tone reminded me of that day months ago, the day he said, "Don't open the bag." Ethan came in, yawning. "Ready for the road?" I nodded, but my stomach twisted. The bag sat quietly by the door, its blue fabric faintly shimmering in the morning light. I picked it up and felt the weight shift again, lighter than it should have been. We loaded the car. I sat in the passenger seat, the bag resting at my feet. Ethan started the engine. The road stretched ahead, narrow and white. The trees bowed under snow. Everything looked still, but I couldn't shake the sense that something underneath was moving. I tried to focus on the sound of the tires, the hum of the heater, the slow rhythm of Ethan's breathing. But then, through the stillness, I thought I heard something faint, a soft, muffled sound from inside the blue bag. I told myself it was nothing, just the car shifting, just my imagination. Yet when I glanced down, I could swear the zipper moved slightly. My chest tightened. I reached out, hesitated, then pulled my hand back. The car rolled on through the snow, steady and quiet. The morning sun caught the bracelet on my wrist again. It flashed once in the cold light, like a warning, then faded. The world outside was white and calm, but deep inside, I felt the beginning of a storm that had nothing to do with weather. The car's heater clicked softly. The air was still. And in that stillness, I realized that forgiveness can be its own kind of blindness. Sometimes, we say yes again because we fear what will happen if we finally stop saying it. The house was quiet again. Only the ticking clock dared to speak. I thought they came back for love. But love, when used as bait, becomes the cruelest kind of trap. The road stretched endlessly through the snow. The world outside was pale and silent, a frozen sea of white. Ethan kept both hands on the wheel, eyes fixed ahead, humming softly under his breath. The car heater blew a steady stream of warm air, yet my hands were cold against my lap. The blue bag sat quietly at my feet. It looked so harmless, like something that belonged in the back of a closet. But every few miles, I caught myself glancing down at it, as if expecting it to move. We were a few hours from Lake Placid, close enough that I could almost picture the cabin by the frozen lake. Then, my phone rang. Daniel's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated before answering. Something deep inside me was already afraid. "Hi, sweetheart," I said carefully. "We're almost there." There was a pause. I could hear the sound of traffic in the background, maybe the hum of a car engine. Then Daniel spoke, his voice low, trembling slightly. "Mom, the bag. It's still with you, right? You didn't open it?" My heart skipped. I looked down at it again, the zipper glinting faintly in the gray light. "No," I whispered. "I haven't touched it. What is it, Daniel?" He was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke again, his voice broke on the words, "Mom, I love you. I really do. I need you to remember that." I felt my chest tighten. "Daniel, what are you talking about?" "Just, whatever happens next, promise me you'll remember that I love you." The line went dead. The sound of the disconnect tone filled the car like a scream that refused to come out. For a few seconds, I sat there frozen, the phone still in my hand. Ethan glanced over. What did he say? I couldn't answer. My pulse was pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. He asked again, sharper this time. "Margaret, what did he say?" I turned to him, my voice trembling. He said, "He loves me." Ethan frowned, confused. "That's good, isn't it?" I shook my head slowly. He's never said it like that before. The car filled with silence. Only the faint sound of tires against ice remained. Then something deep in my gut shifted that old, trained instinct from years in the hospital, the one that had saved lives when seconds mattered. My breath caught. I knew that tone, that kind of goodbye. "Ethan," I said quietly, "turn the car around." He blinked. "What?" "Turn it around," I repeated, louder this time. "Now." He hesitated. "Margaret, we're almost." "Turn it around," my voice cracked. I reached for the dashboard, desperate, my fingers trembling. "Please, Ethan, something's wrong. We have to go back." He pulled to the side, the tires skidding slightly. "What's going on?" "I don't know," I whispered, clutching my chest. "But that bag, there's something in it. Something he doesn't want us to find." The air in the car thickened. The smell of metal, faint and sharp, filled my nose. "If this moment touched you, share it. Someone out there might need it today." Ethan slowed the car to a stop on the shoulder. The wind outside howled through the trees, Snow swirled past the headlights in ghostly ribbons. He turned to me, his voice calm but firm. "Margaret, you're scaring me. What could possibly be in that bag?" I didn't know, but my hands were already moving. I reached down and lifted it onto my lap. It was heavier than before. The canvas was cold, damp with condensation. I stared at it for a long time, my breath fogging the air. My hands shook as I ran my fingers along the zipper. Every instinct told me not to. Every mother's fear told me I had to. "Ethan," I said quietly, "if I open this, I need you to be ready." He nodded once, though his face had gone pale. My fingers hesitated on the zipper. My heart hammered. I could hear the sound of my own breathing, sharp, uneven, loud against the silence. Then, for a brief moment, I thought I heard something faint inside the bag. Not a voice, not movement, just a soft click, like glass touching glass. I froze. The bracelet around my wrist turned icy again, the metal biting into my skin. "Ethan," I whispered, "drive, just drive. We'll open it when we're safe." He didn't argue this time. He started the engine, the car jerking forward through the snow. The headlights cut through the storm, painting the road in gold and white. The car was silent except for the hum of the heater and the rhythmic beating of my heart. I stared out the window, watching the trees blur past. Every instinct in me screamed that something was closing in, something I couldn't yet name. We drove in silence for another half hour before Ethan spoke again. "You think Daniel's in trouble, don't you?" "Yes," I said softly. "I think we all are." He gripped the wheel tighter. "Do you want to call the police?" I thought about it, then shook my head. "Not yet. I need to understand what he's done before I bring anyone else into it." The snow thickened again, swallowing the world in white. The road disappeared under our tires. The silence pressed against my ears until I could barely hear my own thoughts. I looked down at the bag again, resting quietly at my feet. It seemed smaller now, but somehow heavier, like it carried more than just its contents, like it carried the weight of truth itself. The house was quiet again. Only the ticking clock dared to speak. I thought of Daniel as a boy, how he used to line his toy cars in perfect rows, naming each one, how he cried when his father's old truck broke down and we had to sell it. He had always hated losing things. Now I wondered what he had lost this time and what he was trying to hide from me. I raised him alone after his father died. I thought love was enough. I was wrong. The wind outside screamed louder. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Margaret," he said, "tell me what you think is in that bag." I turned toward him slowly. Something that shouldn't exist. For a long moment, we didn't speak. The car moved forward through the whiteout, a small dot of motion in an endless storm. Inside, my hand found the cold edge of the silver bracelet. I pressed it against my pulse and whispered to myself, "Don't be afraid to know." The heater hummed softly, the glass fogged with our breath. The air felt thick, heavy, waiting. And somewhere behind us, far in the distance, a siren began to wail. It faded into the storm, faint but unrelenting, like the echo of a truth racing to catch up with us. Sometimes, a mother's love is not what saves her. It is what warns her just in time. I remember the silence most of all, the kind that hums inside your ears when the world around you stops breathing. The car was pulled over on the side of the snowy road, wind pressing against the windows like invisible hands. Ethan stood a few feet away, his breath turning to white ghosts in the cold air. My hands trembled as I unzipped the blue bag sitting on the back seat. Inside, everything looked innocent at first. Noah's tiny pajamas folded with care, the soft stuffed bear I had given him last Christmas, a pair of little socks that still carried the faint scent of lavender detergent. But beneath that sweetness, my fingers brushed against something hard. Plastic, layers of it. I lifted one of the folded shirts and froze. The small rectangular packages were wrapped tightly in clear plastic, sealed with tape. The air around me changed, heavier, colder. Even after years working as a nurse, seeing things that could break the human spirit, I knew exactly what I was looking at. Not medicine, not sugar, not flour. Drugs. My breath caught in my throat. I stared at those bundles, unable to move. My mind refused to connect what my eyes already knew. My son's voice echoed in my head, the way he had said, "Don't open that bag, Mom." The way he had told me he loved me right before we reached the border. He wasn't worried about my health or my comfort. He was worried about the bag, about what would happen when it crossed that line into Canada. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. A strange calm washed over my body, the kind that comes when shock is too big to hold. Ethan came closer, saw the look on my face, and knelt beside the open car door. "What is it, Margaret?" I couldn't speak. I only pointed. When his eyes found the packages, the color drained from his face. He staggered backward, one hand clutching his chest. "Dear God," he whispered. "They were going to use you. They were going to turn you into a criminal." Something inside me broke. I reached up and touched the silver bracelet on my wrist, the one Ethan had given me on our wedding day. For 50 years, that bracelet had meant love, loyalty, trust. It had never left my skin. Until that moment, I slid it off slowly and let it fall into the snow. The sound it made was soft, barely there, but to me, it was deafening. It was the sound of everything I thought I knew about my family shattering. The wind picked up, carrying fine flakes of snow into the open car door. They landed on the bag, on the folded clothes, on the clear plastic that glistened like glass under the faint light of the car's interior. I could taste metal in my mouth, a bitterness that spread from my tongue to my chest. Ethan put a hand on my shoulder, his voice breaking. "We have to go home. Now." I nodded. I couldn't cry. Not yet. My body moved as if it belonged to someone else. I zipped the bag shut, placed it on the floor, and climbed back into the car. When Ethan started the engine, the headlights carved two trembling paths through the falling snow. Behind us, my phone began to ring. The screen lit up with Daniel's name. Then, it rang again, and again. I stared at it, feeling nothing. The sound was shrill, almost angry, demanding to be answered. I reached over and turned it face down. We drove in silence. The only sounds were the tires grinding against the icy road and the rhythmic slap of the windshield wipers. Each mile we put between us and that border felt like a mile away from a version of myself I no longer recognized. In my mind, I kept seeing Noah's smile, the way his small hands had waved at us from the back seat of their car just hours ago. How could they? How could my own child hide poison beneath his son's pajamas and ask me to carry it across a border? I had loved Daniel more than I had loved my own breath. I had worked double shifts to help him through college, sold jewelry to pay his rent when he first got married, written check after check believing I was saving him. And all along, I had been feeding something darker, his entitlement, his weakness, his belief that no matter how far he fell, his mother would always catch him. Now I understood the truth. I hadn't been saving him, I had been teaching him that I would bear the weight of his mistakes forever. As the car descended the winding hill toward home, the snow turned to sleet. The windshield blurred with streaks of ice. Ethan kept both hands on the wheel, jaw clenched, eyes locked on the road. Neither of us spoke. Words felt useless. At a gas station outside Montpelier, we pulled over. I went inside to wash my hands. The smell of gasoline and old coffee filled the small restroom. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, at the deep lines around my eyes. My wedding ring gleamed under the fluorescent light, but my wrist was bare where the bracelet had been. The skin there looked pale, almost naked. When I came back to the car, Ethan reached for my hand. His palm was warm and steady. "We'll handle this," he said quietly. "We'll protect ourselves, and we'll protect Noah." Hearing his name made my throat tighten. The image of my grandson's innocent eyes collided with the memory of those plastic packages. It felt like two worlds colliding, good and evil, love and betrayal, and I was trapped in the middle. We reached home long after midnight. The house was dark, the snow outside piled high against the porch. I carried the blue bag inside, set it on the kitchen floor, and stared at it one last time. Then I walked to the fireplace, opened the drawer where we kept old photo albums, and found one from when Daniel was Noah's age. There he was, smiling, missing his front tooth, holding a snowman he had built with Ethan. That little boy, so full of life and promise, could not be the same man who had just risked his mother's freedom for money. But he was. I placed the photo on the table beside the bag. For a long time, I just stood there, letting the memories run through me like a film I no longer wished to watch. Then I took a deep breath, picked up the phone, and blocked his number. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, and somewhere in the darkness the silver bracelet lay buried beneath the snow. It was strange how quiet the house felt, without the hum of fear that had lived in it for years. I realized then that the woman who had left for that trip in the morning was gone. The one standing here now was someone new, someone who finally understood that love without boundaries is not love at all. It is surrender, and I had surrendered long enough. That night, as I turned off the kitchen light, the blue bag still sat in the shadows near the door, silent and accusing. But I no longer felt powerless in its presence. For the first time in years, I felt something else. Strength. The next morning, the world felt quieter, as if the snowfall outside had muted every sound but the beating of my own heart. I had not slept. All night I sat in the living room, staring at the blue bag resting against the wall like an uninvited ghost. I kept waiting to wake from the nightmare, but dawn came, and it was still there. By 8 o'clock, Daniel's car pulled into the driveway. The sound of tires crunching over ice made my stomach tighten. I watched from the window as he climbed out, his shoulders hunched, his breath steaming in the cold. Lily followed him, her face hidden behind a scarf. I could see them arguing softly before they knocked on the door. Ethan looked at me, his eyes asking the question I already knew. I nodded once. Let them in. Daniel stepped through the doorway, as if it were a courtroom. He looked older than he had the last time I saw him, paler, his eyes darting from me to the blue bag. "Mom, please, I can explain," he said. His voice trembled, but not with guilt, more like fear. I stayed seated at the table. "Then explain," I said quietly. He moved toward the bag, but Ethan's voice stopped him. "Don't touch it." Daniel froze. Lily stood behind him, wringing her hands. "We didn't mean for you to find it," she said. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way." I folded my hands in my lap to keep them from shaking. "You put illegal drugs in my car," I said. "You asked your own mother to carry them across a border. Tell me, in what way was this not supposed to happen?" Daniel's face crumpled. "It was just one trip. We owed people money, dangerous people. They said they'd hurt Noah if we didn't. I didn't know what else to do." I felt a tremor of pity, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "So you thought the best solution was to let me go to prison in your place? To make me the one who paid for your choices?" Tears ran down his cheeks, freezing at the corners of his mouth. "It wasn't like that. I was going to find a way to fix it afterward." I stood slowly. "Fix it? You were going to fix your mother's criminal record? My ruined name? My grandson growing up knowing his father used his grandmother to smuggle poison?" Lily reached out, her voice trembling. "Please, Margaret, we were desperate. We didn't think. We were scared." I turned to her. "Fear is not an excuse for cruelty," I said. "Fear does not give you permission to destroy the people who love you." For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Daniel sank into a chair, his face buried in his hands. I wanted to touch him, to comfort him the way I had when he was a little boy who scraped his knees. But that boy was gone, replaced by a man who saw my love as a tool. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "You need to leave," I said. "Both of you." Daniel looked up, confusion cutting through his tears. "What? Mom, please, we can figure this out together." "No, Daniel. There is no together in this. You crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." He shook his head violently. "You can't just abandon us. We have nowhere else to go." Ethan stepped beside me, his voice calm but firm. "You already abandoned her when you chose money over your own mother's life." Daniel's eyes flicked between us. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. His shoulders sagged. For the first time, I saw him not as my son, but as a man standing in the ruins of his own making. They left without another word. The sound of the door closing echoed through the house like a verdict. After they were gone, I sat down at the kitchen table. The air felt thinner, emptier. My hands found the small leather-bound notebook I used for household expenses. For years, its pages had been filled with neat handwriting and numbers rent payments for Daniel. Groceries, bills, insurance. Every line was a record of my devotion, of the slow erosion of boundaries I never thought I would lose. I opened to the last page and picked up a red pen. My fingers shook as I drew a single line across the page, bold and final. Then I wrote, "Today I stop saving those who refuse to save themselves." The words bled slightly into the paper, the ink spreading like a wound, but it felt right, honest. Ethan came to stand behind me, resting his hands on my shoulders. "You did the right thing," he said softly. "I should have done it years ago," I replied. My voice cracked, but there was no shame in it, only release. That evening, as the sun slipped behind the frozen trees, I gathered every document that tied me to their finances. I closed shared bank accounts, canceled the automatic payments, and cut up the extra credit cards I had given them. Each action felt like a small act of survival. The sound of the scissors slicing through plastic was sharper than I expected. When it was done, I sat in the quiet house and listened to the old clock ticking again. The rhythm was steady, grounding. For the first time in years, I could breathe without the weight of guilt pressing on my chest. I walked to the fireplace and picked up the photo of Daniel as a boy, still smiling with the snowman he had built. I touched his face gently. "I hope you find the strength to become that boy again," I whispered. "But I can't lose myself trying to save you." The house creaked with the cold. Outside, snowflakes drifted against the window pane, catching the light like tiny sparks. Later that night, I placed the blue bag in the attic, locked the door, and slid the key into the bottom drawer of my desk. I couldn't bear to look at it anymore, but I wasn't ready to throw it away. It was a reminder of the moment my life changed, the day I chose truth over illusion. Before I went to bed, I glanced at the spot on my wrist where the silver bracelet had once rested. The skin there was still slightly marked, a faint circle of pale flesh. It no longer felt like something missing, but like proof of something survived. When I finally lay down beside Ethan, he took my hand in the dark. "You were brave today," he said. "I was tired," I replied. "Tired of being afraid. Tired of mistaking love for obligation." He squeezed my hand gently. "Then let this be the first night we sleep without fear." I closed my eyes, listening to the quiet breathing of the man who had stood beside me through everything. For the first time in a long time, the silence didn't frighten me. It felt like peace. And as I drifted toward sleep, one truth settled deep within me. Love is not endless forgiveness. Love, when it's real, knows when to stop giving. A month later, the phone rang early on a Saturday morning. The light outside was thin and blue, the kind that turns the snow into glass. I had just finished my first cup of coffee when I heard Ethan answer in the hallway. His voice was quiet, his tone uncertain. When he came into the kitchen, the look on his face told me everything before he spoke. "It's the police," he said. "They've arrested Daniel and Lily." For a long moment, I just sat there, hands wrapped around the warm mug. The heat seeped into my palms, but I felt cold all over. He continued, his voice steady, almost clinical, as if reciting a fact that no longer had power to shock. "They were stopped at the border crossing near Quebec. The officers found drugs hidden in their car." I closed my eyes. There was no rush of anger, no fresh heartbreak. I had lived through that storm already. What I felt now was something quieter, like standing in the ruins after the fire has burned out. The house is still standing, but nothing inside is the same. "What about Noah?" I asked. Ethan hesitated. "He's with a social worker for now. They'll call us soon. You're listed as next of kin." I nodded. There was nothing else to say. That afternoon, a woman from Child Protective Services arrived at our door with Noah. He looked so small standing there, clutching a backpack that seemed bigger than him. His eyes were red from crying, but when he saw me, he ran forward and buried his face in my coat. "Grandma," he whispered, his voice muffled by the wool. "Where are Mom and Dad?" I held him close, feeling his thin shoulders shake. "They made some bad choices, sweetheart," I said softly. "But you're safe now. You're home." He stayed pressed against me for a long time before finally letting go. Ethan showed the social worker around the house, explaining where Noah's room would be, how we'd set up space for his homework, his toys, his books. When she left, the three of us stood together in the living room, surrounded by the faint hum of the heater and the smell of dinner simmering on the stove. That night, after Noah had fallen asleep in the guest room, I walked in to check on him. The moonlight through the window made his face look peaceful, almost angelic. His stuffed bear was tucked under his arm, and his lips moved slightly, as if he were whispering to it in his dreams. I sat at the edge of the bed, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead, and felt something in me begin to mend. For years, I had tried to save my son from his own choices. I had poured every ounce of love, money, and faith into a man who believed his mother's devotion would never run out. But now, looking at my grandson, I understood something I never had before. The greatest act of love I could give Daniel was not more forgiveness, but the chance for his child to grow up differently. In the weeks that followed, life began to find a new rhythm. Mornings started with the sound of cereal pouring into a bowl, the clatter of a spoon, the squeak of sneakers on the kitchen floor. Noah filled the house with questions about everything. Why does snow sparkle in the sun? Why do people lie when they say they love you? Some questions I could answer, some I couldn't. Every afternoon, after school, we sat at the kitchen table to do homework. The same table where I had once written checks for Daniel's bills now held spelling words and math problems. I realized that healing didn't come from forgetting, but from transforming the space where pain once lived into something useful, something honest. Letters came from the prison twice a month. Daniel's handwriting was shaky, almost childlike. He apologized again and again, said he was trying to get help, that he prayed every night for me to forgive him. I read them all, but I never replied. Forgiveness, I had learned, isn't a gift you hand to someone who asks for it. It's a quiet decision you make for yourself when you're ready to stop carrying the weight. Lily's letters were shorter, angrier. She blamed Daniel, the police, even me. I didn't read those to the end. Some truths no longer needed to enter this house. Spring came early that year. The snow melted, revealing patches of brown grass and the first shy signs of crocuses along the fence. One afternoon, Noah ran into the yard, shouting for me to come outside. In his small hand, he held something silver, half buried in the thawing ground. "Grandma," he said, holding it up, "look what I found. It's pretty." It was my bracelet, the one I had thrown into the snow that day on the highway. The silver was tarnished, but the engraving inside our initials, M and E, was still clear. I knelt beside him, my breath catching. "That's mine," I whispered. He turned it over in his palm, studying it. "Why did you drop it?" "I thought it was lost," I said. "Maybe I needed to lose it for a while." He smiled, his eyes bright. "Can I put it back on you?" I nodded, and he carefully fastened it around my wrist. The metal was cold at first, but as his small fingers brushed against my skin, it began to warm. "There," he said. "It belongs to you. Don't throw it away again." The world seemed to pause around us, the air filled with the faint scent of wet earth and melting snow. I looked at the bracelet, gleaming faintly in the sunlight, and felt tears fill my eyes. It no longer represented the illusion of trust I had once placed in others. It represented survival, the strength to rebuild, and the love that could still grow from broken soil. That evening, Noah sat at the kitchen table doing his homework while Ethan read the newspaper. The sound of a pencil scratching against paper filled the room. Every so often, Noah giggled at something in his book, and the sound reached me like music. It had been years since this house had known laughter that pure. I realized then that peace doesn't arrive with grand gestures. It comes quietly, in small moments: a child's laughter, a shared meal, the comfort of knowing the worst has passed. When I put Noah to bed that night, he looked up at me and said, "Grandma, are we going to be okay now?" I smiled, smoothing the blanket over him. "Yes, sweetheart, we already are." Later, as I turned off the lights and walked through the house, I paused by the window. The sky was clear, the stars bright. Somewhere far away, Daniel was serving his time, facing the consequences of his choices. I didn't hate him anymore. I hoped that someday he would understand what love truly meant. For now, I had a new purpose: to raise Noah to be kind and responsible, to show him that love doesn't mean rescuing people from their own mistakes, but guiding them towards something better. The bracelet gleamed softly on my wrist as I whispered a silent promise to the night. I would teach this boy to live honestly, to face his fears without hurting others, and to know that redemption is possible, even in the aftermath of betrayal. In that promise, I found my peace. Winter returned quietly, as if it had tiptoed back across the mountains just to visit us. The days grew shorter, the air sharper, and snow began to fall again, soft and steady, covering the ground like a clean white page. I found myself watching it often from the kitchen window, a cup of tea cooling in my hands, Noah's laughter echoing faintly from the next room. Life had become ordinary again, but it was the kind of ordinary that I had once prayed for. No sudden phone calls asking for money, no tension heavy enough to make the walls tremble. Just the rhythm of small things: homework, dinners, bedtime stories. The quiet was no longer frightening. It was a comfort. Sometimes at night, when the house was still, I would sit by the fire and think about how much had changed. For most of my life, I had believed that love meant sacrifice. I had given everything I had to keep my son safe, to hold our family together. But love without limits is like water with no container. It spreads until it disappears. It took losing nearly everything to understand that boundaries are not barriers to love. They are what keep love alive. One evening, after I tucked Noah into bed, I sat beside his small desk where he had left a drawing from school. It showed the three of us standing together outside the house, the snow falling around us. He had drawn me with a smile, holding his hand, and Ethan beside us with his arm raised like he was waving. Above us, he had written in uneven letters, "My family." My throat tightened as I looked at it. There were no missing figures in that picture, no shadows, just peace. Later that night, I took out my old notebook, the same one where I had written every expense, every sacrifice, every promise that was never kept. Most of the pages were filled with ink faded from years of use. I flipped to the last page, where the red line still cut across the paper like a scar. I read the sentence I had written that day and felt no regret. It had been the moment I took my life back. But tonight, I added something new beneath it. I will raise love, not dependency. I will protect without losing myself. The words felt final and freeing. I closed the notebook and set it beside the fireplace. A few weeks later, a letter arrived from Daniel. It was shorter than the others, written in a steadier hand. He said he understood now what I had meant. He wrote about the programs he had joined in prison, the books he was reading, the way he was learning to sit with his own silence. He thanked me for taking care of Noah. He did not ask for forgiveness this time. He simply said, "I hope one day I can show you I've changed." I placed the letter in a drawer. Maybe someday I would write back. Not yet. Healing is a slow process, and some bridges cannot be crossed until the foundation on both sides is strong enough to hold the weight. On the first Sunday of February, Noah and I built a snowman in the yard. The air was so cold it pinched our cheeks, and our breath rose like smoke. He insisted on giving the snowman my old red scarf and laughed when it tilted to one side. Watching him, I felt the ache of the past loosen its hold just a little more. When the evening came, we sat by the window, the fire glowing behind us, and watched the snow fall in steady silence. Noah leaned his head on my shoulder and whispered, "I like when it's quiet like this." I smiled, tracing a circle on his small hand with my thumb. "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." After he went to bed, I stayed by the window, looking out at the snow settling on the pine trees. The world outside was calm, and inside me there was that same calmness, hard-earned and fragile but real. I thought about all the women like me, the mothers, the grandmothers, the sisters who give until they forget where they end and where others begin. I wished I could reach through the glass, through the years, through every lonely kitchen in the world, and tell them this truth. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to stop saving people who will not save themselves. Because love is not proven by how much you endure. It is proven by how much peace you create, even when that peace requires distance. I know now that I am no longer the mother who gives without question. I am the grandmother who guards what is left, who teaches love with limits and kindness with strength. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I hear Daniel's laughter from when he was a boy, echoing alongside Noah's. It is not a painful sound anymore. It reminds me that even broken things can hold beauty. So if you, like me, have ever had to draw a line to protect your heart, know this: you are not alone. Every act of courage you take, every quiet boundary you build, becomes part of a larger story. The story of mothers who learned that enough is a sacred word. Outside, the snow kept falling, each flake catching the light as it drifted down. I watched it gather softly on the branches until everything was white again, untouched, waiting to begin anew. And in that moment, I understood. Endings are only the world's way of giving us permission to start over. Ending. The last word. Sometimes love is not about holding on. It is about knowing when to let go so that both hearts can finally breathe. I've learned that peace is not something you find in others. It begins the moment you decide to stop betraying yourself. Love without boundaries isn't kindness. It's surrender. If this story touched something inside you, stay a little longer. Tell me your story, the one you've never dared to say out loud. Maybe someone out there needs to hear it tonight. You can quietly like this video, share it with a friend who might need courage, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story when it finds its way home. Would you have done what I did? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and sometimes your words heal more than you think. Tomorrow's story begins in a small town in Maine, where another woman will face the same choice, but this time, her secret could destroy the only person she's trying to protect.